Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, IDDSI Recipes and Methods of Preparation for Each IDDSI Level. This webinar is sponsored by General Mills Convenience and Food Service, providing the food people love away from home. We are proud to offer the quality products that food service professionals rely on for consistent results in their own operations, as well as the beloved brands their consumers know and trust. Today's webinar is also supported by General Mills Bell Institute of Health and Nutrition. The Bell Institute is a dedicated group within General Mills whose mission is to be the source of scientific health and nutrition expertise that creates value and growth for General Mills. We have also partnered with Thicket. Thicket believes that everyone deserves to enjoy the simple pleasure of their favorite meals and beverages and is dedicated to providing safe and satisfying nutrition solutions for people with dysphagia. My name is Megan Kelbell. I am the Healthcare Channel Lead with General Mills, and I will be your host for the webinar today. Now, before we begin today's program, I'd like to cover a couple of housekeeping matters. So first, this webinar is being recorded, and the recorded webinar, along with the presentation slides, will be available within a few weeks on our website. At the end of today's webinar, we will have a Q&A period, and you can submit questions at any time during the webinar by using the chat feature located on the lower left-hand corner of your screen. After the webinar concludes, you will be asked to fill out a short survey and will receive an email with links to the slides and continuing education credit certificates within a week. And last thing, we will be playing several videos throughout today's webinar. The audio for these videos will come through your computer speakers. If you are listening through a phone line, you will not be able to hear the videos during the webinar. I encourage you to hop off and join on computer if you are able to, but if not, you can access the recorded version of the webinar afterwards to hear the audio. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers. So our first speaker is Margaret Roche. Margaret is the founder of Roche Dietitians and is a nationally recognized leader in nutrition consulting. Maggie and her team create strategies that help healthcare organizations distinguish themselves through food and nutrition. Most recently, she has created IDDSI training programs for texture-modified diets that simplify IDDSI implementation, improve food quality, and promote safety. She is a registered dietitian with a master's degree in clinical nutrition. She has advanced credentials as a certified diabetes educator, is board certified as a specialist in gerontological nutrition, and is distinguished as a fellow of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. During today's webinar, Maggie will be helping us understand the importance of the chef-dietitian relationship in creating safe, delicious IDDSI recipes. Our second speaker today is Chef Sonja Kehr. Chef Sonja is a corporate chef here at General Mills, supporting our healthcare channel and its customers. At General Mills, Chef Sonja puts her extensive background in healthcare food service, catering, and college and university food service to task. Since joining the company in 2006, she has offered support, training, and culinary solutions to food service operators. She keenly recognizes the important role that food plays in patient satisfaction and in a guest total experience. Chef Sonja draws on her expertise in training and development, healthcare solutions, and recipe development to support all of our food service customers. During today's webinar, you will see Chef Sonja in action in the kitchen, demonstrating how to adjust recipes to meet IDDSI criteria. And with that, I will turn it over to Maggie.
Great, thanks, Megan. Welcome, everyone. We're glad to have you here. Let's start by looking at our learning objectives today. And our biggest objective really is to help you understand the dietitian and chef/CDM relationship. And we'll talk a lot about that today. We'll also demonstrate techniques for preparing recipes for IDDSI levels 4 through 7. And we'll show you how to apply IDDSI testing methods for the development of recipes. I think it's important that we underscore the value of a chef or dietary manager, dining leader, and dietitian partnership. Getting IDDSI recipes right is a challenge from both the culinary and the dietetic perspective. So you're going to need both sets of expertise in the test kitchen. The chef's attention to taste and appearance, and the dining leader's understanding of the food service system's operation, along with a dietitian's emphasis on the IDDSI framework standards and nutritional value, all come together to create a good IDDSI recipe. Now, trial and error is part of this process. So being able to work together towards the same goal is important. And I like to say one of the best kept IDDSI implementation secrets is the power of this chef, dining leader, dietitian partnership. Sonja and I created a series of 5 videos demonstrating these learning objectives. And before I run each one of them, we're going to point out a few things to look for in each one of these 5 videos. So I'd like you to look for some of the things that we did differently. And first of all, you're going to see right away that we use testing to guide us. The other thing we did is we thought differently about the basic recipe that we started with. So instead of starting with a fully cooked recipe and modifying from there, which is what we traditionally do with textured modified foods, we thought about things a little bit differently, like particle size before cooking. Another thing we did differently is that we saw stickiness as our challenge, and you're going to see us talk about that, and that's where the trial and error came in for us. But ultimately, what you're going to see that we did differently is that we really leaned on each other's strengths, and that's where we were able to have our successes with the recipes. Very quickly, just in case you're not super familiar with the IDDSI testing methods, because we're going to spend a lot of time showing you the testing methods, I'm going to give you this visual. For each IDDSI level between 3 and 7, there are particular standardized tests that we do to make sure that the food fits that particular IDDSI level. For all of them, there is an appearance test. There's also a fork drip test, and that falls under level 3, liquidized, and level 4, pureed. We use a spoon tilt test to test for stickiness. That's level 4, and which is pureed, level 5, minced and moist. And then you're going to see us using a variety of fork pressure tests on level 5, minced and moist, level 6, soft and bite-sized, and level 7, easy to chew. All right, let's get started and look at some of the videos. Our first video is going to be on overnight oats, and the ingredients are yogurt, milk, quick cook oats, strawberries, and we will use a little bit of food thickener as well. And we're going to start by talking about particle size.
So you may know that for minced and moist, which is IDDSI level 5, the particle size should be no greater than 4 millimeters by 15 millimeters. And I'm going to show you with a fork, because as soon as people start hearing millimeters, they start thinking, oh boy, I got to get a ruler out. But let me show you, I think this is really interesting. If you look at the tines of the fork, you can see, now here we have a measurement of 15 millimeters, which is 1.5 centimeters. That's what we're working with here. And if you look, you can see it is about 4 millimeters is the amount of length between the tines of a fork is about 4 millimeters. And then if you look at the whole 4 tines of the fork, the distance between the outside edges of the fork, that comes to exactly 15 millimeters. So when we're talking about minced and moist, we're going to measure things in terms of being no wider than 4 millimeters and no longer than 15 millimeters. So in other words, no wider than the distance between 2 tines of a fork and no longer than the distance between all 4 tines. And then for children, it's half that size. That's the adult size. And now when we talk about soft and bite-sized, level 6, it's 15 millimeters by 15 millimeters, which is exactly the length of the full fork, which is 4 tines. So moving forward, when we talk about this, Sonja and I, we're going to be talking in terms of the fork by translating that into the 4 millimeter by 15 millimeter or the full 15 millimeter length for soft and bite size. Now we're going to talk about particle size for oats in particular. So here we have a rolled oat, old-fashioned rolled oat, and here we have a quick cook oat. So we probably see the quick cook oats more often in healthcare. And let's look at the individual particle sizes. Here is an old-fashioned oat, and you can see in terms of minced and moist, it's no longer than 15 millimeters, but if I look at the width, and I'm looking between the two tines of a fork, it does get a little bit wide. So this is not going to work for minced and moist. You can also see that this would work, though, for soft and bite size here, because both particle sizes are going to be within that realm of between the edges of the fork. Let's look at this for minced and moist. So minced and moist here, it does fit nicely lengthwise. Let me show you again. Fits nicely lengthwise, but widthwise we're getting a little close. And there's bigger particles in here, plus it's going to swell. So now that we talked about particle size, Sonja and I had to work together to determine how are we going to build the recipe.
So Maggie, you know what I noticed was that when we were trying to finish the finished recipes, when we do hot foods, we just sit there and puree it or chop it just as it's ready to go out the door. But you noticed with oats, once you hydrate them, they just spin around in the bowl. So how can I verify, prove, validate that I have the right particulate size in my overnight oats? Well, so we discussed and decided we need to actually chop the oats dry to make sure that we can prove all of them consistently are the right particle size. So Maggie's going to go ahead and dry grind some oats so that you can see the particle size for each level ahead of time, and then we have a surprise ending for level 4.
So just as a reminder, these are the old-fashioned oats, and we thought, Sonja and I, that once they started to swell that we could have a problem with perhaps them being too large. The other thing about old-fashioned oats is that they can get kind of chewy. So we decided instead that we were going to focus on the quick cook oats. So now with the quick cook oats, what we can do is grind them up a little bit smaller even for minced and moist to account for the fact that these are going to swell. But we guesstimated, and we were right, that these will work out pretty well even after they're soaked for both soft and bite size level 6 and easy to chew level 7. So we're just going to bring them down in particle size a little bit for the minced and moist. So here I have 2 servings of oats. This is a cup, and we are going to process these for about, in a food processor, for about 20 seconds. All right. And now I think you'll get a good idea about how the particle size can change. And this is a much better particle size here. You can see what we have. So here's what we ended up with, and I think this is great. You can see that we're not even close to minced and moist size, meaning the 4 millimeter by 15 millimeter size. And so all these particles are smaller, and again, anticipating that they're going to swell, we're going to end up with a pretty good particle size.
All right, so that was how we got started with the overnight oats. But now we did make the recipe, and next we're going to show you how we tested these out. And the overnight oats are a good example of how the recipe testing works out. We mostly had successes, but you can see that we did have one level that did not work for us. And so pay attention to the testing, because it will show you how the process that you need to go through to validate that your recipes are going to work. All right, Toby, we're going to go to the next video.
So you notice when Maggie ground up the level 5 that we still had some irregularity in the size of the particulates. So my biggest concern was when we got to a level 4 and we were trying to puree them, we just could not get those a consistent fine puree size. So we decided that we were going to go ahead and put the oats into the blender. And this way we're going to make more of an oat flour. This way it's still going to hydrate, those grains are going to swell. It's just we're going to have a very consistent size particulate. So in this section, I'm going to go ahead and add the dry oats to the blender. That quickly, we made the oat flour. Okay. Deposit to the bowl. And I just want to navigate this around a little bit so you can see how fine the meal from the oat is. Okay. So it's beautiful. It's going to hydrate rather quickly. We're going to go ahead and we're going to add our milk first. Give it just a little bit of swirl to start hydrating it so it won't get any clumping. And then we'll go ahead and stir in our yogurt. And this is 3 servings that I'm doing right now, 3 half-cup servings. So if it looks a little bountiful, we're going to portion it up for you. And you can see already it's looking like a thickened porridge just from the instant. Okay, but remember, overnight oats, we're still going to let this rest overnight, the same as the standardized recipe for the other textures. So that's still a constant. So then we are going to test the levels again in the morning before service at the temperature it's going to be served. So we're going to have Maggie go ahead and show you how to test each level. We have some prepared that have been rested overnight, and she's going to show you what those sizes are. So now that we've prepared all 4 of the levels, that we did those yesterday, and now today we need to test them because we need to validate that we do in fact have the right texture and right particulate size for each of our levels. So Maggie's going to go ahead and test the level 4 for you.
All right, so we're first testing pureed level 4. And the 2 tests for pureed level 4 are the fork drip test and the spoon tilt test. Let's start with the fork drip test. I'm going to take a little amount of the pureed overnight oats and I'm going to put them on a fork. This is how I do it so that the food doesn't fall off the side. I try to do it with a spoon over the fork. And you can see that we don't have anything dripping. We have a little bit of a tail, but it's not dripping in dollops. And so this is a pass for pureed level 4. Also notice that it sits in a mound nicely on top of the fork, and that's another thing to look for. So we're going to call this a pass. Now we're going to do the spoon tilt test. And the spoon tilt test, same idea. We want to see that the food sits nicely on a mound on top of the spoon. And then we go ahead and we give it a flick. So you can see the overnight oats stuck to the side of the spoon. So the spoon is supposed to come pretty well clean or with a little film or a little bit of particle left over. All right, so now we're going to look at the minced and moist level 5 test of the overnight oats. And there's a few tests that we do for this. One of them is the appearance test. We have to make sure that our particle sizes are really going to be the appropriate size that we talked about before. And here I'm going to put the fork through it, and you can see it's really, everything's fitting so nicely between the tines of the fork, just the way we anticipated, because that's what we started with. Now there's a second fork test we're going to do, and that's called the fork pressure test. And that's to make sure that the particles in the minced and moist food is soft enough so that there's not a lot of chewing required. And you can see as I go through the particles here, it's very soft. It will mash underneath, slight pressure. My thumbnail is not turning white, and you can see it's going very nicely, soft through all these particles of oats and yogurt and milk. All right, and now the third test is the spoon tilt test. This test is, again, testing for stickiness. I'm going to put a little amount of the oats on the spoon. And then over here, I'm going to do a flick, a tilt, to make sure that it falls nicely off the spoon with maybe just a little bit of a particle left. That's fine. Little amounts are fine, but you see how I have that film there on top of the spoon? That means that it's not too sticky and it'll be easier to eat. For minced and moist, level 5. All right, now we're going to look at SB6, soft and bite-sized, level 6. Now these particles might be a little bit bigger, which is okay with soft and bite-sized. And we start with the appearance test. First and foremost, we want to make sure there's no separate thin liquids. That's true for level 4, pureed, level 5, minced and moist, and level 6, soft and bite-sized. We don't want separate thin liquids. And you can see I'm tilting the plate a little bit, and we don't see any separate thin liquids coming down. So that's perfect, that passes. Now I'm going to test my particle size. Well, we can tell by looking at this. We don't have anything that's larger than the 4 tines of a fork. So all of our particle sizes are fine here. Now remember, we did recommend using the quick cooking oats for this because we also need to make sure that it's soft. So I am going to test for the to make sure that the particle size is soft enough for the soft and bite size, level 6. And so with the fork pressure test, we can use enough pressure that turns the thumbnail white, blanches it white. But you can see I don't even need to put that much pressure on it. And these are so nice and soft, they are just breaking up under pressure here. So you can see that's very nice and soft. So here's a particle piece right here. Let me get to it. See, it breaks up very nicely. So even though these particles might be a little bit bigger than minced and moist, they're breaking up very nicely. So now we're going to do regular, easy to chew, level 7. Now easy to chew, level 7 has 2 tests. They both are fork pressure tests. And let me show you the first one. Now, of course, regular easy to chew level 7 does not have a particle size requirement, so we have 2 fork pressure tests to complete. The first one, and this is going to be easy, is that the side of a fork or spoon can cut the food easily into segments or pieces. So you can see how easy this is. That's definitely a pass. So now let's look at the other fork test, which is the fork pressure test. That is really under the same criteria or the same characteristics that we were using for soft and bite size. And I like to remember this because when we're looking at foods passing the fork pressure test for soft and bite size, I always have to say to myself, well, if it doesn't pass the fork pressure test for soft and bite size, it's not going to pass for easy to chew level 7 either. So let's see how soft this is. And you can see as I push down, it's very soft. Everything is squishing or squashing under the tines of the fork. I can push as hard as I need to so that the tines of my thumbnail can turn white. But really on this, I don't even need to push that hard. And this is beautifully soft. And this is the fork pressure test for easy to chew, level 7, and it's a pass.
All right, so you can see how really the IDDSI testing methods are integral to developing IDDSI recipes. So next we're going to show you a strawberry sauce recipe and how we developed it. And there's a lot to see here on this next video. You can listen in how Sonja and I worked through the process of adapting a typical puree sauce recipe. And what you'll be viewing is how we came up with our standardized recipe. We're going to talk about ingredients, equipment, method of prep, and all within the parameters of the IDDSI framework and testing methods.
So Maggie did such a great job showing you the different testing levels for the foundation of our overnight oats once we had the oats hydrated. Now let's talk about our garnish sauce. Normally when you do the overnight oats, you're going to add juice or chopped fruit. You know, and I want to give you the option too. You can have fresh or frozen, whatever you have in the house. But as we're thinking about the modified textures, originally I thought, well, like for the regular all the way up, even through the minced and moist, I was just going to take strawberries and go ahead and dice them up and just make them fine enough that they would pass the fork test and so on and so forth. But you know what? It came to my attention, they still have seeds. And so we can't offer our modified textures any diets that have skins or seeds in them. So we're going to need to puree it and make sure we strain it out. So in this section, I actually took some frozen berries, because whatever you have, whether it's fresh or frozen, puree them up, and I'm going to strain them out. But I do want to mention, I have an ultra fine strainer called a chinois here. This is actually too fine. It catches everything that's caught in there. And so we want to go through a fine strainer, but just not ultra fine. So this one right here is actually perfect. Okay, it's a fine mesh strainer still, but it's going to let enough of the juice flow through that we can capture it. So I'm going to show you really quick. I did a quick blend. And obviously I cheated and got a jump start.
Yeah, and those are frozen strawberries,
Yes,
right?
these are
Those
frozen.
Are the frozen ones.
Okay, so even frozen strawberries still have seeds. But we're going to put it through the strainer. You'll see that even when we blend it up, that we still have solids, and that is the part that we can't have.
And it's pretty thin. It's almost like a juice. So
Yeah.
we know we're going to have to.
Okay.
We know we're going to have to thicken it.
Exactly. So now the part that we strained out is actually too thin. Okay. So we're going to have to thicken it up. Okay. So we have one that's already been strained, and so we're going to have Maggie go ahead and add the starch for you, the thickener, and we're going to see what the appropriate texture is for that.
Yeah, and what we have here is just regular commercial thickener. And this is another area where we really had to collaborate, because when Sonja did blend up the thickener, I'm going to use, by the way, 4 tablespoons of thickener here. When Sonja blended up the strawberries, it really blended it up very nicely. And you really, unless you really knew the IDDSI framework, you wouldn't know that you have to think about the seeds.
Yes.
Because these seeds did get broken up a little bit. But as we looked at the strawberries in particular, you could see that the seeds were still there. All right, so I'm going to make a little bit of noise here and mix this up. And we have to give it a second to set, so we'll come back and show you what this looks like as a pureed, strained strawberry.
So Maggie, what's our test going to be to know what texture we're looking for with our strawberry puree?
Well, exactly. You used the word pureed, so
Okay.
it will be pureed level 4.
Okay.
And so with pureed level 4, we have the fork drip test. So
Okay.
and that's going to make sure that it's going to show us that it's thick enough.
And that's
it's
why we
not
added
gonna-
the thickener,
that's why
because
we added
it
the
was
thickener.
too thin.
Exactly.
It would have run through if we had just take the strained pureed
Exactly.
strawberries. Excellent.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then the other thing we're going to test for is, of course, that it's not too sticky. And I don't think these will be sticky, but if we had a different type of a fruit, we wanted to make sure it's not too sticky, and we would use the spoon tilt test for that as well.
If we did like a mashed banana or pureed peaches, would we be able to use the same amount of starch every single time?
Well, the beautiful things about the peaches, canned peaches, and the mashed bananas
Yeah.
is that now we don't have to worry about the seeds.
Excellent.
So you could break those up into your different levels. You
Okay.
could dice the bananas into a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch size, mince it or mash it. You know, sometimes we forget that minced and moist could also be mashed. It can be mashed.
So we could mash the banana.
Mash the banana,
Okay.
dice the
peaches.
dice, and even dice the
Oh, okay.
peaches, dice the banana. The thing is, though, we have to make sure that they're still soft enough. So on those types of fruits, we would want to make sure that we use the fork pressure test.
Okay.
Minced and moist, like I showed you with the oats, we have to be gentler. Our nail bed can't turn white.
Okay.
Soft and bite size, we can really get in there with some pressure, and our nail bed can turn white.
Cool.
All right.
So how's our
let's take a look.
hydration phase going?
We are close, but I'm going to tell you, I can tell by looking at it, and I'm going to show you on a quick fork drip test.
Yeah, we're not passing the
We're
drip
not there
test
yet. So
Okay.
we need to add some more thickener. And I was afraid of that because, you know, these strawberries were juicy.
Yes.
And I think using a frozen strawberry, the ice crystals may have contributed a little bit there too.
100% I agree
So
with
I'm gonna.
you.
So this is an example of test. You know, and so we tested it with the fork. Now I'm gonna add, and my guesstimate. What's your guesstimate? One more or two more?
I was going to say 2 more
Yeah, that's
because
exactly what I was gonna say.
it wasn't
2
quite
more.
foam worthy in
So
it's-
here we
yeah.
go. I'm gonna make some noise. Sorry.
It's okay.
And I'm gonna mix this here. I can see it's forming up a little bit nicer. You can see it. See how it's moving?
Nice. Yeah, so you
But
see the
for puree-
ribbons.
but for
Yeah.
purees, one of the tests that you can see in the framework, if you read the framework, you'll see purees are not pourable. And this is almost a little bit pourable.
Okay.
As it's moving around in the pan.
So 1 or 2 more, or should we
I'm
wait
thinking
and let
one
it
more.
hydrate more?
I'm thinking one more.
Okay.
I'm
All right,
thinking
I'll
one
get
more.
out the oats because once we've validated
right.
our texture
That's
for
right.
the
That's right.
finished sauce, then we're going to go ahead and garnish our oats that we've already done.
Yeah, I think this is gonna put us in business, Sonja. I think we're gonna get there with this. So really, this is a good example of, for those of you who have food service teams, this is the kind of conversations you should be having at your workbenches every single day. And whoever's preparing the purees in your communities or in your organizations,
Yeah.
they need to learn those subtleties that, ooh, I think I need a little bit more thickener, or maybe I need a little bit more liquid.
Yeah.
So
I think
that's,
having picture charts sometimes is really
Yes.
handy too. Oh, there we go.
how
There
we doing
go.
here? So it's not, you don't see any drips or dollops coming down.
Nice.
It's very nice. Now let's see how we're doing on our spoon tilt test. Put a little bit on here. Oops. And tilt. See? There might be a
Nice.
little bit of residue left. You can see that residue there. That's okay. You can see through it. That's a nice pass. And
So
now
cool.
what's the last thing that we're supposed to do? Taste it, right?
I was going to say, where's the yumness? Okay. And should we be tasting it with the oat combined?
We
or-
could, but I want to make sure that,
Okay.
this is sweet enough and that you don't feel anything on your roof of your mouth when you bring your tongue up. There's no like residue. in
Definitely
there.
no seeds. It still tastes very strawberry.
It's nice.
Yeah.
I was afraid as I was putting the thickener in. I was thinking, is this going to taste too starchy? But I think it's delicious.
Yeah, I think it's
Very
beautiful
strawberry-ish.
too. Let's go ahead and portion up the finished
Okay,
disc.
great.
Can I have that red scoop
absolutely.
right here?
There you go.
All right. And we're just going to go ahead and do
Let me get
1
this
per
out of the
serving.
way.
This really helps with your plate presentation too. So really, this has been an excellent learning experience and how we can make 4 different, or at least 3.5, different levels of overnight oats with strawberry topping.
All right, so that was the strawberry sauce. Next, we're going to move on to the biscuits. We did a biscuit and gravy recipe, but we had to figure out the biscuits first. This slide shows some of the factors that we considered when building the recipe. And you'll notice in the video that now we're starting to gain some confidence about moving forward with our collaboration. I do want to point out that on the pureed version of this recipe, it was for a half of a biscuit, the amount of liquid and milk and thickener that we used. But let's move on and I'll show you the video.
One option that's good to have on hand is if you have fully baked biscuits. I love this option because I don't need to, bake ahead. I don't really need to think about it. It's just when the orders come in, I can sit there, I can take it out of the freezer, and then it can thaw in just a few minutes, or I could actually process it from frozen. So you'll notice too Okay, very light, soft texture. So this is going to be really easy for us to process into smaller bits or even to grind up into a really smooth or ultra fine texture. If you have more modified textures, you may want to go ahead and bake from dough, and that's okay. One of the things I want you to be slightly cautioned about is you want to make sure you don't have really any hard outer edges. Dual textures, okay, but you just don't want to have any hard textures because those are going to be harder to break down. They won't break as consistently as the nice soft parts. So we're just keeping those two things in mind because remember, we want to have even size particulates regardless of which level that we're looking for. Even is what we're looking in the finished texture. Maggie, let's go ahead and we're going to try some out. One of the things to watch out for is how are we going to get each of the IDDSI levels using bread products.
And that's our challenge.
It is.
The challenge for a lot of folks is the bread. All right, Sonja, so let's talk about how we would get this biscuit to work on one of the IDDSI levels. And I'm going to start with minced and moist because, you know, IDDSI.org has a video on how to make bread for minced and moist.
Okay.
Now, they're using one slice of white bread or wheat bread, and they grind it into a fine texture, but not super fine. They put it in a chef's mold, and they spray it with water.
Okay.
So we're going to do something a little different because we have a biscuit, and the biscuit, I think, has more substance to it. And this is a big biscuit.
Yeah,
this
so
is
these
a 2 ounce.
biscuits. Yeah.
All right, so again, back to our texture story, just like we talked about with the oats, we're going to use, I ground this in the food processor, and so we're going to put it right here in this bowl. Now, again, for the IDDSI.org recipe, they just used spritzes of water, but it was a thinner amount here, and you're going to see this fills up the mold. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to use 5 tablespoons of milk for this 2.5 ounce biscuit. And I'm going to use a fork and I'm just going to mix it around, and you can see it's starting to absorb it. It's nice and moist.
Yeah.
It's getting wet, and I'm just going to combine it so that it'll be ready to be either heated or refrigerated because, you know, once the milk's in there, we have to either serve it hot or serve it cold.
I like that you're using the fork too, because if I use the spatula, it could compress the grains, where here we're tossing the grains with the liquid, so we're coating the grains really evenly, and then we can go ahead and gently place them into the mold. Because remember, we don't really want to have compressed, we want to have hydrated and evenly hydrated. So that's why we're focusing a lot of energy on this part right now.
Now, I can tell you, Sonja, I feel like this could use a little bit more milk. You know, and that's what happens when you're building recipes, is that I'm going to put another tablespoon in here.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
So here I have my tablespoon. So now I'm up to 6 tablespoons, and this sounds about right. When I've done cakes and things per ounce, I use about 3 tablespoons of milk per ounce. So you can see now I'm really milky, and I'm moist here. And I'm thinking, especially if I were going to serve this cold, I'd want to make sure that it got soft enough. All right, so now we're going to put it.
Sure.
Yeah, help me out here.
I'll drive.
Okay, thank you. You get that in the mold.
Yeah, so I'm just using the end of the spatula, not necessarily the whole thing, because I just want to kind of like guide it when it falls. I do not want to push it into the mold. I want to let it fall into the mold of its own accord. And this way, we'll give it a gentle tap, only so that it settles just a little bit evenly here. And we're just going to gently guide it around, okay, so we have an even layer. Now we're going to go ahead and cover this with plastic wrap and throw it on our steamer. Again, you want a steamer combi. You do not want the regular oven because we don't want to melt the plastic wrap. I mean, you could do it in foil too, so it's more heat proof. Do not do this with your plastic pellets. You want to do it with a regular
What about
china.
putting it in your steamer?
Oh,
if you don't have a combi oven, you can put it in your steamer.
Yes, you can put it in the combi. Okay, so I'm going to do this.
Okay, I'll stand back.
Okay, yep. All right, and we're going to give it just 5 minutes. Should be more than plenty. So let's get it. And max, I think more than plenty. We just want to get to the 165.
Yeah.
Okay. You just want to make sure everything is fully heated, because then once you're plating too, you want to remember you still need to assemble whatever additional ingredients you're going to put as it goes out the door. So you want to account if there's any cooling at all. So that's why the 165 plate it hot, keep it hot, get it to your
And
patients.
of course, test it. And we'll show you
Yes.
that. We're going to test it for
Yep.
you. But you test it, again, you test at the temperature you're serving.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
Exactly. So-
Good.
Okay, so now we just had this come out of the combi. We are at our 165, and so we're going to go ahead and unmold it really gently to try and keep as much of the shape that we try to get in there as possible. Remember, your ring or your mold may be hot, okay, because you just heated this up, so be careful not to burn yourself. And again, I am not pushing down on our sample. I'm just trying to make sure it releases from the mold. And Maggie's going to do our test for us to prove if we have the right textures.
Right, that looks really nice, don't you
Cool,
think?
yes.
And so I'm going to take a little bit of it, and you can see that it's very nice and you can smell it too.
Oh,
It smells
yeah.
good, doesn't it? So I'll put a little bit here on the plate because, again, this is minced and moist, and we want to make sure that it's nicely moist. And you can see there's some individual particles in here still, which is nice because I hear speech pathologists say it's nice for folks on minced and moist to have some kind of mouthfeel to what they're
Yeah.
eating. But you see how beautifully soft it is?
Yes.
It's really passing the fork pressure. Oh, I should show you my thumb. The fork pressure test really
Yeah.
nicely. And then real quick, I'm going to do a
It
I'll do a
looks
spoon
good. It
tilt
looks like
test.
stuffing. Or dressing, depending which country.
Yeah, it does,
the
doesn't
country,
it?
Yeah.
It does, doesn't it? And then here we go. Here's
Yep.
our, look at that. I mean,
Nice.
it's-
Nice,
that's really
clean
nice.
release.
That's
Good
a clean
job.
release. And then I suppose we could also do a, we could also, just to make sure, just to show you that it's not, that milk, you know, all that milk we put in there, those 5 tablespoons, you can see from a fork, even if you can do this for minced and moist, just especially when you're doing things like stews and such. That, you know, it's not too much moisture on here either.
Yeah, I don't see
So,
any dripping at all. So Maggie, I noticed that when we did our testing, you know, we pureed, we mixed the water or milk gently into the biscuit, but it passed for levels 5 through 7, but I noticed that it did not pass the spoon test for level 4. So we made an adjustment. So what we're going to do this time is we're actually going to take the same 3 tablespoons of milk that we had put on top of our biscuit. And this time we're actually going to add 1 tablespoon of starch thickener to the milk first. Okay? We're going to mix that up and kind of make like a foam ahead of time. Once that hydrates, then we're going to go ahead and fold in our biscuit. So this way, it's actually just going to coat the grains of the biscuit. So rather than trying to hydrate the grains, we're coating the grains. And so you can see, okay, it's a nice light foam. Now we're going to go ahead and just gently fold in. This is our 1 biscuit that we did for all the other versions. And the idea of using the fork to kind of fold them is that we really want to try and coat each of the grains. Okay, and now you can see how the grains are very nicely separated. So we're going to gently put these inside of our mold. We're going to heat them the same way that we did in the combi steamer with the plastic overwrap. And then when we do the final test, you're going to be able to see how we were able to keep those grains separate, and then it releases from the spoon as well.
All right, so what we have here is the pureed PU4, you know, level 4 biscuit. And this is when we had a finer ground of the biscuit and we added a slurry or a mixture of food thickener and milk. This we heated because we want this part of a hot dish. So the first test we're going to do is the fork drip test. That's our first puree test. And you're going to see very nicely it does not drip. And we have, you can see it's not dripping. It's got a little bit of a tail, but that we're going to call that a pass. All right, now our second test is going to be the spoon tilt test. So now we're going to put some of the biscuit on the spoon, and then we're going to do, again, this is for stickiness, and there it comes right off. And you can see there's a little bit of a gleam there.
Yeah.
That's the fat from the biscuit. And so the trick for this was to use the food thickener and milk combination.
Yeah.
So
See, and
that's
I
a-
never would have thought about that with a biscuit to add even more thickener or an additional starch because I'm like, it's a bread.
It makes space. It makes space
Yes.
for these products. So
That
that's
makes a
going to be
lot of
nice. Now I
sense.
would probably shape this up. I mean, it looks like
Yes.
mashed potatoes right now. I would shape it up, but I just wanted to get it out of the oven and
Yeah.
tested while it was hot. I'm testing it at the temperature that we're going to serve this at.
It's very
so
important.
that's why I wanted to
Excellent.
make sure that that we got that. All right, that's a win.
All right, so now we're going to bring it all together for you. We're going to show you the entire biscuit and gravy recipe. All these paths, we're not going to show you the testing on it. We're going to show you how it ends up at the end. And this is our final video.
So I just happen to have some pureed breakfast sausage, and I also did some white biscuit gravy. So what I did was I wanted to show you, I actually pureed the meat in a blender to make sure that I could get it smooth enough. And when I heated it, because you can actually have some browning, you can have some crispness with meat, I actually added some chicken stock. So one, it softened the edges of the sausage, and two, then when I put it into the blender, it really helped emulsify and smooth out that texture. So I had no lumps at all, which is what we're looking for this texture.
Now I'm going to interrupt you for a
Yes.
second. I'm going to stir this.
Yes, please.
But Sonja, did you say you use pre-cooked breakfast sausage?
I did.
Okay.
I did, because we just had like a number 10 case of, whether you want turkey or pork
This is
sausage or
beautiful.
even maybe a vegetable sausage. And
This turned out well. And I'm going to do, if you don't mind, I'm
Yes,
going to do
please.
a quick
Okay.
test on it
and
while
then
we're
we
here.
have the gravy for you as well.
I'm going to do a quick test on this while we're here. Let me get in.
because you're
Here we go.
testing each level, right? Before you even assemble
Yes.
it, you need to know that each component is the proper
Not
texture.
too thin. It's got a little bit of a tail. Whoop, that came off the side. But you can see it's sitting up nice on the fork. That's a pass. All right,
Excellent.
and then I'm going to do a quick spoon tilt test for you. This is pre-cooked sausage. I'm amazed by that it was able to come soft like this. And then there you go. It passes.
Nice.
That's a nice pass. And you can see how it's been released off the spoon.
And I tried these too. I'm just letting you know, it might look different, but it is so tasty. It's like beef mashed potatoes.
So this we know is 2 ounces by weight.
Yes, it was.
So, and this is would be the equivalent of 2 ounces, well, 2 and a little bit more.
Correct.
Of bread.
Yes.
And so now we've got the biscuit, we've got the meat, the sausage.
Correct.
And we got the gravy.
Excellent.
All
Now,
right.
how should we assemble these? Should we put the gravy down first or the meat down first or blend them together?
Well, this is interesting, and I'm going to take your advice on this. But I'll tell you what the standard is. And this is
Okay.
a good example of the chef dietitian thing. So the new standard for purees is it's not pourable. So how we used to pour gravy all over our
Right.
purees to help them for swallowing,
Yeah.
we can't have it separate liquids, and it has to be incorporated into the dish.
Okay.
I'm thinking the biscuit would really benefit from some gravy. So
Okay.
you tell me, though, from a culinary perspective, is there a way for us to get some gravy into the biscuit, some gravy into the, then put the meat on,
Okay.
and then put a little bit more gravy that's somewhat incorporated into the meat. That's the goal.
Okay, so in that sense, do we have one more empty? Let's take our biscuit, and we'll end up with a clean plate here. But, so we're going to take our biscuit. We're going to add the half scoop of what our portion would have been in this one.
Oh,
And then do you
that's a
have
good
one
idea.
more empty? So that way
Yes.
I can take a half scoop of gravy in this one. So I'm going to blend, and then my full portion of meat. Okay. So
It's a
now
great idea.
I can, or actually you're right. This would work even better. Let's do the fork.
And I'm just going to incorporate. I'm just trying to incorporate it in
Yes.
a little bit so that it's not so much a separate gravy as much, and it doesn't have to be super incorporated,
Yeah.
but doesn't that look good now?
It actually does look real good.
And it looks
Mashed
like biscuits
potatoes.
and gravy. So now I'm going to go ahead.
Okay,
And,
do you want it in the mold or
I know,
fried?
I got 50 of these to make. So,
Okay, go ahead.
You know
No,
what I'm
plonk
saying?
it, plonk
so
it.
we're not going to, if I only had one, I might put it in the mold, but I think
Yeah.
this is that's nice, I think.
Oh,
Isn't
yeah.
that lovely?
Look at that form, too. That's
Yes.
actually really good shape. I like
Yeah.
that.
And
Okay,
then,
so then now
Chef,
I can.
you can go from there.
Okay, so this one I'm really going to put the two together very well. Now, do I have to retest? Because we tested the meat and we tested the gravy, but do I need to retest now that I've blended? Because technically, I've added two things that could be different textures.
Right, all right, I'll do that.
Okay, I just want to make
So,
sure.
Here comes the spoon tilt test.
Yeah.
And okay, I've got a little bit of a film there. That's acceptable.
Okay.
That's acceptable.
Because there are two separate components passed
Yes.
for all the tests.
Well,
and now that we put them together.
We need to make sure they test. But
Okay.
that's a thin film. That's acceptable. And so now, and we know that's going to test
Okay.
by looking at it, but I'll run the test if you want me to.
Okay, and so are we running the test on this one because this is our finished product,
This is
correct?
the fork drip. You want me to run a fork drip
Yes.
on that? Okay.
Let's do that because I think that was probably the one I'm most concerned about.
Because you were afraid of thinning it out.
Yes, because the
Okay.
biscuit gravy might have actually thinned it.
Now we're going to get a tail, but
Oh,
look
no,
at
that's
that.
still holding form pretty
That's
good.
holding nice. And it sits up nice
I
on
like
the
that.
fork. Sits up nice on the spoon.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's nice. That's
Okay.
really nicely done.
Perfect.
And you want me to test the biscuit?
Yeah,
All right.
I think that would be a good idea.
Here we go.
This is actually looking really tasty.
You know what? Why don't you grab that plate, Sonja, because I don't want to
Okay.
mess up
Yep,
your
sorry,
beautiful. I'll just take a little smidgen off the end here.
Yep, no, you're
I
good.
don't- I don't want to ruin your
It's all
your
good.
lovely presentation here.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
You know, as a
Okay,
matter
now
of
you're in
fact,
shot. Yep.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the spoon, and boom, whoop, there it goes.
Excellent.
And now I'll do your fork pressure. Look at that, how beautiful that is.
Wonderful.
Coming right off.
So that means our biscuit passed, our gravy passed. I think we could put it together and make a meal. What are you feeling?
I believe you
Okay.
are right.
So can I have some presentation? Can I
Oh, yeah,
layer
you
it?
do your
Okay.
thing. Do
Excellent.
Your thing. Do your thing.
Okay. So I want to show some of the biscuit,
Oh, I like that.
but then this way, you know, you're getting a full presentation. Now reduce the urge to go ahead and put chopped parsley on it, but but this way you're definitely seeing the individual biscuit. You're seeing the individual gravy. It's not running on the plate.
Yeah, I think you could even take some of your white gravy, and I think you could.
Oh, even a garnish?
I do. I think you could do that.
Okay, let's go ahead and we'll put a little bit of garnish on there.
I do think you could do that. Now, remember, this is a big portion.
It is.
This is a full breakfast portion.
Okay, just so this is our garnish then. So this is our color contrast on the plate.
Yeah.
That looks yummy.
I'd want it to be fully incorporated into the food, so
Okay.
I'd move it over a little bit.
Okay, excellent.
You know, because we don't want anything separate. But if I tilt the plate, you'll see I do not have separate thin liquids.
Excellent.
So I think that's
That's
it's
pretty
a big
delicious.
portion. It's
It
a big
is.
portion.
Yes,
and
it
I wish
is.
everybody could smell it because it smells very nice.
And so, Maggie, do you want to walk us through what are the 4 levels
All right.
that we did?
Now, this is a biscuit and gravy, and I really like this idea that you came up with, Sonja, because I'll tell you, the breads on their own, you saw the challenge that we had doing
Absolutely.
that, and especially when you get to the pureed level. And so what I really like about this idea is we have the opportunity to really have the bread product, and in this case, the biscuit. We have the opportunity for this to be incorporated with other foods, and that's going to cut down on that stickiness. Remember, the spoon tilt test is about the stickiness, and we want to be able to demonstrate that that foods aren't sticking to the spoon.
Correct.
All right, so here's easy to chew, level 7. And this is really great. I was surprised. Sonja picked a pre-cooked sausage, breakfast sausage, crumble.
Yes.
And you were able to prepare it with moisture, right? In
I
the pan?
did. I heated it with some chicken stock in the pan just to make sure that it didn't crisp while I was heating it.
Yes.
And this way it steamed, it softened it, and it actually helped the meat tissue break down even a little bit more.
Right, and so we tested individually like we've been talking about all afternoon. And so what we have here is crumbles, breakfast sausage crumbles that are softened. And again, no particle size requirement here. Then we have the biscuit. Now, this time we decided with the biscuit, for this easy to chew, we decided we were going to use the level from 5 to 7. We decided to not use just a biscuit. But you did have a good idea about a biscuit that you told me about.
Yeah, so I had thought whether or not we could take like a fully baked biscuit, because these are our softest ones already. Just split it in half, dip it in milk. Okay, so that way it's fully moisturized, and then go ahead and steam heat it. So instead of having particle size, we still have fully moistened steamed biscuits, but then you have the physical integrity of being able to see a whole biscuit.
Now 6, we use those same particles because again, 6, that's soft and bite size, and so we can be half inch by half inch or less, and that's what came with the particle size. Again, you can't put these in the oven and roast them. You have to have them soft.
Correct.
Sonja did that, and then you incorporated the gravy in.
Yes, because I learned that in our earlier technique that we don't want to have too many separate layers because it has too many textures. So we want to have single textures but blended. So that's why we blended the gravy with the meat.
Separate gravy flowing all over the plate.
Correct.
The separate thin liquid, which we don't have here. But it still looks very, very much like we've got some gravy, incorporated
really
in here.
appealing.
And I really like that. That's really going to make the biscuit work well too.
Yes,
and again, this is a big portion. That's a pretty big portion there.
Yeah.
All right, so now over here we're on minced and moist, level 5. And here we did have to, you pulsed the meat.
I did.
But you pulsed it before you cooked it, right?
Correct. Yes, correct.
Frozen.
Yes.
It was a frozen, pre-cooked breakfast meat. So I was really surprised that you were able to get these as soft as you did.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, and there it is. Isn't that
Okay,
wonderful?
and then I just blended the gravy in with that pureed meat so that we
Okay, I'm going to move on and show you, because we want to have time for Megan to talk with us a little bit more and maybe take a question or two. So there was a lot to cover here. Thanks for your attention, and Megan's going to fill you in on some next steps.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Maggie. I would like to share that, so we will get to questions, but I do want to share quick that for attending this live webinar, you are able to get a free product from us at General Mills, some of the items that were covered in those culinary demonstration videos. So keep your eyes out for an email that will be coming later this week to redeem that free offer. And so now would like to get into a little bit of Q&A. So I can read out some of these questions that we've received, and we have Maggie and Chef Sonja here to help answer some of these. So one of them, the questions here is about testing with the fork tines. So somebody said that when they measure with their fork tines, it's about 17 millimeters measuring from the inside of the first tine, but from the entire width, it's about 20. So do you have any clarity or direction on when you're measuring from the fork tines if you're looking at the inside or outside?
That's interesting because IDDSI.org says, it's kind of an international thing, the size of forks. So you must have big forks. I would try buying a box of forks from whoever your supplier is and use more of a classic fork size. And I think you're going to see, for you, figure it out. If it's the inside is 15 millimeters, then use your inside measurement. If the outside is 15, then use your outside measurement. But that was just a fork that we had in the test kitchens, and it worked. And most forks that I've used have worked. So I think you have big forks.
Thank you, Maggie. One other question is, are there CEUs available for this presentation? Yes, there are. So again, we will shoot out an email to everybody who registered and attended this live webinar, and that will have the link to get that free product as well as to download your CEU certificate. And there's a question, how can I view this again? We will have the recording as well as the slides uploaded onto our website, and we will shoot a link out to that as well. One other question here. I was not aware that MM5 is 4 millimeters by 15. I'd always thought it needed to be 4 by 4. Was that changed recently?
I don't want to say changed. I want to say clarified, because I remember going through that same awakening as you just have. If you go to IDDSI.org and look at the audit tools, you'll see on the audit tool, it's very clear that it's 4 by 15. And also, I think the framework that came out maybe, I think it was July 2019, I think it was more clear there that it is 4 by 15. But I know for sure that it is on the audit tool. Look there and you'll see it.
Fantastic, thank you. One additional question here. On the nutritional care manual, it indicates that like minced and moist level 5 can have berries with small seeds, for instance, strawberries. It's listed under fruits. Can you clarify if that's correct or where the standing is on small seeds?
This is how I interpret it. The framework talks about no hard seeds and no piths, or, you know, which is like, I think that's an international term for little bits of hard particles. And so with the strawberries, sometimes you do get a softer seed, like as compared to something like a raspberry. But I strain them out because I do find, and I have tested a lot of berry type desserts just coincidentally, and I do find that they're pretty hard. And I feel like if it bangs against your fork when you're testing it, that'll give you an indication that it's just too hard, as opposed to sometimes, as you know, you can get a seed that's a little bit softer, or it's so small it doesn't even matter. But my experience with the strawberries has been that those seeds can be, I don't want to say substantial, but present and hard.
Perfect, that's very helpful, thank you. One additional question here, specific to some of the recipes. So oatmeal continues to thicken while cooking. How do you heat the overnight recipe and keep the same texture and moisture level?
Well, the easy answer is to test it. My guess is I think we would do okay if it was hot. And I'm going to ask Sonja to chime in on this if you're here, Sonja, because again, I wouldn't know unless I tested it, but my guess is thinking that because it swelled like that overnight, the oats and the milk, I'm guessing it's going to work. Do you have a feeling for that, Sonja?
Yes. We actually used to do oatmeal for tray line, and when we had to do it for purees, we had to compensate for the swelling, and then it cooled down, and then it went back to retherm. So I think for the heat, cook, hold, and then if you're using a cooked oat for the overnight oats versus using it as oatmeal, you would have to actually do the test, verify the size particulate in the swell. And I think you might actually benefit from the procedure that we did to pre-grind it before you cook it. It'll cook up kind of more like cream of wheat. And then you have verified that the texture is what you need. And then you only have to thin down the consistency, you know, if it's too thick to meet your level. So I think that would be an easy, basically test it. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And I know we're a little bit over. I'll sneak one last question in before we have to wrap it up. Does it set differently when the food item you're working with is hot versus cold when you're mixing it with a thickener? So does the temperature of the food that you're mixing with the thickener make a difference?
Absolutely. And that's why we kept saying over and over again, test at the temperature you're going to serve it at, and standardize your recipes accordingly.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. And with that, as a reminder, for joining today's webinar, you can get a free case of General Mills products. So we will be sending an email to you. Here's a couple of just examples of some of the items we used in the recipe videos. So you can get that free case. Keep your eyes out for that. And then lastly, thank you so much for joining today, and we would love to stay connected. So here we have a list of everybody really involved in making this webinar and ways to continue to stay in the loop. Follow our website, our social media handles to know the upcoming newsletters, healthcare webinars, continuing education opportunities that we have in the pipeline coming for you, as well as Maggie and her Roche Dietitians company here. You can stay tuned to the latest updates on her website, as well as materials here for Thicket, who is also a partner in developing this webinar. So thank you so much for joining today, and stay tuned for some of those follow-up materials coming into your inbox. Thank you so much.